Happy New Year. Okay, yes, I know it's February, but Happy New Year. This is when we begin the year on this channel. Welcome, this is What Happened, and I am Sharon Nyambane, and I am glad to see you here again. Today's case is going to be very interesting for very many reasons. First, because we're going to cover the case involving Britain's youngest female killer. And secondly, her name is Sharon. You heard that right, Sharon, but not me, but Sharon. And there are so many interesting facts as you're going to learn from this case, so stay tuned to the end, and I hope you enjoy the video. So before we go on into the video, I want to give my disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to any person I mention in this video. And secondly, that this information is information that has been collected from different sources and compiled into one video. And make sure you have subscribed and get notified every time I post a new video. So let's get into it. Katie Rackliff was a beautiful 18-year-old girl. She was happy, she had friends, she had a social life, and she had a whole life plan, and she knew what she wanted. She knew she wanted to own a hair salon in the future, so that is exactly what she was working towards. She wanted to have a family, she wanted to have children, and she was excited about her life. However, this was cut short because around May of 1992, well into the beginning of June 1992, Katie had just broken up with her boyfriend, and she was really sad, she was devastated, and for that reason she was pulling back a lot from her friends and family, and she was really spending a lot of time alone. And I think most of us do that when we are going through a heartbreak, or basically you're just hurt, or a breakup, and that is exactly what was going on in her life. So she was just going through it, and her best friend decided that she was not going to let her friend continue sinking in this sadness. So she decided that they were going to go to a nightclub and have fun and, you know, forget about all the sad things that were going on in their lives. And that's exactly what the girls did. The girls decided to go to a club. They went to Ragamuffins in Kimberley, and yeah, they had a good time as planned. And at close time, the girls were separated from each other, so everyone went their way. Unfortunately, Katie Rackliff would not go back home. Her body was found in the morning on a side street in Farnborough, and she was found half naked. She had multiple stab wounds. She had slash wounds on her chest, on her face, on her genitalia. It was bad, and the state in which her body was found was really bad. Some of the cuts went through her body. They were really deep injuries, and for all those reasons, the nature of the injuries, the police straight away thought that this was a male perpetrator. They thought that the person who had committed this crime was definitely a male, because it required a lot of energy for someone to inflict that kind of injuries on another. And a criminal profile was made. A criminal profile basically is a description, a description of the person, physical attributes, sometimes behavioral attributes, and they came up with a criminal profile. It was a male, and he was described to have been someone who probably went to the gym a lot, or worked out, or had a job that required a lot of physical strength. And so it means it was basically a well-built man. And this is what the police were going by. They looked for suspects, and they were not finding any. And even as they were making the criminal profile, criminologists said that this was more so specifically a male suspect that was being looked for, because the injuries Katie suffered were even inflicted upon her. Some were inflicted upon her after she had died. And usually, as described by these criminologists, female killers don't use more than a necessary force that is required to end a life. For instance, if they were to kill you, they'll use just enough force to kill you, but they won't go overboard. And that is the opposite of most male killers. So that cemented the idea that the perpetrator was definitely a man. So the police went on with this search for the suspect. They continued investigating no arrests were being made because they had no leads. And you have to bear in mind that this was in the 90s. There were no CCTV cameras. There was literally nothing the police were going to use. They had no leads at all. And after a couple of years, after 2 years, this case went cold, but it stayed open still. Now, 2 years later, police received a call, and the call was about a similar attack that had happened at Collingwood College. Apparently, a student had stabbed another student in Collingwood College, and the police had to rush to the scene first to save this student and to make an arrest. So the student who had been stabbed was Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie had been stabbed through the liver, and she was in pain, but she was rushed to hospital immediately, and thankfully her life was saved. On the other hand, the other schoolgirl who had stabbed her was Sharon Louise Carr. Sharon Louise Carr was arrested and taken to for assessment. Now, Marie narrated to the police what had happened, and she told the police that she had gone to the toilet and she was lured by Sharon, who told her to help her look for a pound coin that had dropped in the toilet. So Anne-Marie decided to help Sharon to look for that coin because she was afraid of Sharon. And apparently most students were scared of Sharon because she was very violent. And so, afraid of being harmed by Sharon, Anne-Marie obliged and went to help Sharon to look for this pound coin. And unfortunately, when she was bent over looking for this coin, Sharon pushed her to the ground and took out a knife and started playing with it through her hands and fingers while laughing. And Anne-Marie was on the floor, shook. She was so shook, she didn't know what to do, and she knew she could see that she was going to be attacked. So she quickly got up and tried to run out, but that is when Sharon launched herself on her and stabbed her with a 4-inch blade, which injured her pretty badly. But as this struggle was going on, some girls walked into the washroom and found this going on, and they dashed out immediately and called the police. So on the other side, Sharon was taken to the hospital for assessment, but because she was still a young girl, she was still 16 years, and immediately she was actually 14 years, sorry, and she was still in that fit of rage. She was still in that manic episode, and she was fighting the staff. She actually tried to strangle or to suffocate a guard, and they decided that this was too much and she needed to be taken straight to being detained. And that's when Sharon was taken to a young offenders institution. Sharon was found guilty for 2 counts of bodily harm, and she was sentenced to 2 years at the young offenders institution. Now, Sharon Louise Carr was born on the 12th of September 1979, and that makes her a Sagittarius, I think. Yes. And Sharon was born in Central America. That is where she grew. She lived with her parents and her siblings. Her father has been described to have been a very violent alcoholic. He always got violent when he drank, and unfortunately that was every day because he drank every day. Her mother was not any better. Her mother has been described as a very angry woman who was very cold, and she punished her children in the most vile ways possible. She used to beat up her children for the slightest mistake, and she used to put hot pepper in their genitals. Yes, you heard that right. And so she was nothing like a mother should be. She was not nurturing. She was not kind to her children. She basically bullied her children, and this came to an end when the parents split, and Sharon's mom had met an Englishman who was an army man. When he had come over to America, he had been posted for work, and eventually when it was time for the man to go back to England, Sharon's mom did not want to be left in America, so she took Sharon and they went to live in England, in Kimberley. Now, life in Kimberley was different because as opposed to their previous living conditions. They previously lived in a lot of poverty, they struggled, but in Kimberley, they lived a good life. There was stability, the environment was nice, there were good schools. Sharon enrolled into Collingwood College, a very nice school, and she was getting settled well into school. And unfortunately, as soon as she was well settled, the worst happened. She changed for the worst. She became a bully. She became so rude. She'd talk back to her teachers. She started roaming around and being in the company of the worst kids she could. They were older than her. They were criminals. They'd commit robberies. I mean, it was bad. And they'd even use drugs. And it is said that Sharon started smoking weed from the age of around 11. And this must have been very detrimental to her health, because this meant that her brain was affected, because smoking such weed at such a young age is definitely going to affect the brain, the development of the brain. And yeah, it was just bad. She became rowdy. It was bad. And after 1 year of living in England with Sharon's mom, this Englishman decided that he was not going to continue living with Sharon's family, and he wanted out. And this was the worst decision he would have made, because Sharon's mom was angry. She got angry. She went into the house and she took a pot of boiling cooking fat and poured it on this poor man. And unfortunately, Sharon was there and she watched the whole thing. She didn't bat an eyelid. She didn't call the cops. Nothing. It was as if this was normal. This was the norm. She was so used to violence that she was not getting shocked by anything anymore. She was just damaged. And around this time, her mother started introducing her to the practice of voodoo, and apparently she believed that practicing voodoo would help you control anyone you'd want. And that's why she was very, very, very interested in teaching Sharon the practice of voodoo. So this meant that Sharon started sacrificing animals, and within no time she was doing more than sacrificing animals. She started killing animals for fun. One time her friend said that she actually fried a living hamster. Like, when it was still alive, she was frying a hamster that was alive. That is cruel. I find that most children like animals, they like pets, but this was the complete opposite for Sharon, because she was torturing these pets. She was killing pets. The neighborhood pets started disappearing one by one, and at some point she was caught after she had decapitated a neighbor's dog using a spade. Yes. So this was just cruel, and this was, or should have been, the first indicator that she was not normal, or she was not a normal child, because this is the classic indicator of most people who grow up to be murderers. They start torturing or killing animals because they have no regard for life, or they don't give importance to life, so they can easily take a life. It doesn't affect them like it affects other people. And fast forward to the youngest offenders institution where she had been taken. Sharon was serving her sentence, and the plan was to serve her sentence of 2 years, where she would now be allowed to go back to society, and continue with her life. Fortunately or unfortunately for her, this was not the case, because she started talking a little bit too much about her past offenses, and she gave a little bit too much information. And within no time, everyone started making connections that she was talking about the murder of Katie Rackliff. And that's when the prison staff decided to report to the police. And it is said that actually Sharon, I don't know if she thought she was going to be impressing this prison guard, but she had a little crush on him, and she started giving him the details of the crime. And this guard obviously reported to the police everything that Sharon had said, and that's when the police came in and took Sharon for questioning in an actual police station, now where grown-ups are taken when they commit crimes. Now, at this time, the police didn't know what the outcome of such an interview would be, because she was still a child, And even though she had been telling everyone who cares to listen about how she'd committed these crimes, the police didn't know how she was going to react when they got involved. So they took her in, and to their surprise, she sang. Sharon told details of everything. She was so proud of the crime she had committed. She told them everything she had done. Details, she actually covered details that had not been released to the public. So that's how the police knew that actually this girl had committed this crime. It wasn't just a child who was trying to, get credit or be naughty or, or maybe be confused and think that she had committed the crime. Because Sharon told the police that she had actually stolen Sharon's bracelet from the crime scene. And this is information that had not been released to the public. So that right there and then the police knew that Sharon had committed this offense. So immediately they went on, they continued to interview her, and this interview took a total of 27 hours. It was over a couple of days, but the total was 27 hours. And within those 27 hours, Sharon had given them all the details they needed. But at first, Sharon had given about 3 narratives of what had happened that night, and the police decided that one of them made much more sense, and it checked out with everything, with the facts and what the police had. Because Sharon said that on that night, on the night of June 6th, she had been out driving. She had taken a drive with 2 other male adults, and they had gone to a club in Kimberley. And around that time, there were so many people who were leaving the clubs to go home, so many revelers, and amongst one of them was a poor drunk Katie. That's when they pulled over and offered Katie a lift. And in her drunk state, Katie trusted these people and got into the car. So they started driving around, and they were going in the opposite direction, not in the direction of where she was going, where her home was. And she started getting scared, and this car pulled over to a secluded part of the park. And Katie at this point decided to jump out of the car and run into the park to escape, because she was afraid of what these people were going to do. And that's when Sharon took a 6-inch blade knife from the car and ran after Katie as fast as she could. And unfortunately, she managed to reach her, and she started stabbing her so bad. She started stabbing her, and she stabbed her a total of around 30 times. That's insane. That was including the superficial slash wounds that she had. And she went on and on and on, and while she was confessing, she didn't actually explain why she decided to injure her genitals. But she went on, and as she had finished attacking Katie, she went back to the car where they had parked, and that's when she found that the other people had driven off. The 2 men had driven off and left her alone, to finish whatever she was doing. And that's when Katie knew that she had to hide the body by herself, and she went back and tried to lift Katie's. That's when Sharon knew she had to hide the body. So she went back and she tried to lift Katie, but Katie was a bit too heavy for her, because Sharon was not a big person really, and she was just 12, so it was a lot. So she couldn't lift the body, so she opted to drag the body into the street, and she couldn't take the body any further because it was just too heavy. So she decided to abandon the body at that point and ran home, and that's exactly what she did. She ran all the way home, and continued on as if she had just not killed a person. So eventually she went back home, and she did not tell anyone what happened, and she moved on. So in the other version of the story, she had said that the boys abused Katie before, sexually abused Katie. And in another version of the story, the details changed about where the attack had taken place, because she said the attack started in the car. So the details varied, but the facts stayed the same, that Sharon had killed Katie. And The police summoned these two boys, and these two boys confirmed her story, and they were released because they were not suspected of anything. They gave each other as an alibi, and because the police didn't have any evidence against them, they were released and they went back home. So now, after this, the police decided that they had to go and search Katie's home for any further evidence for Katie's murder or any other crime that she might have committed, because at that time the police suspected that she could have easily killed another person or committed another offense that had not been brought to light. And that's when the police came across a diary, and the entries in this diary were shocking. The police could not believe what they were reading, and I'm going to read some of the entries she had made. In one of the entries, she said, "I am a killer. Killing is business and business is good." In another entry, she said, "I am a twisted life destroyer." In another entry, she said, "I was born to be a murderer. Killing is a must turn on for me, and it makes me so high I never want to calm down." Another entry said that every night I see the devil in my dreams, sometimes even in my mirror, but I realize it's just me. Now, what is interesting is that when all this while, Sharon stayed in custody, and while she was in custody, she actually made entries to this diary, and she said, and that is 1 month to conviction, she said, "I'm not like one of those pretty girls who break down due to guilty conscience. Through the years of causing people grief, I still have not found one." And in another one, she said, "Respect to Katie Rackliff for years today." I mean, these entries were shocking. There was absolutely no remorse. It's like she was reliving the experience of committing that crime. And I say reliving the experience because I don't know if you have watched a lot of true crime. Most of these murderers enjoy reliving it, and reliving it sometimes means killing another person, or if they're unable to kill another person, they relive it by actually writing down what happened, because it takes them back into that time. And this is what was happening here. So Katie went to trial, and at trial she recanted what she had said. She said she had not confessed, and if anything, if she confessed, she was not in a right state of mind. She was mentally unwell, and she didn't mean anything she said. But the police were not going to let this go. They went on, and thankfully Katie was found guilty of murder and sentenced to a minimum of 14 years in jail. It was around this time that Katie started jumping, or not jumping really, but she was being transferred to multiple prisons because she was such a difficult prisoner. She would cause chaos, she fought everyone, she was so violent, so she kept being transferred from one prison to another until eventually Sharon was committed under the Mental Health Act of 1983, and that is when she ended up at Broadmoor Mental Hospital. Now, at Broadmoor Mental Hospital, this is where the worst serial killers in the UK went at the time, and it has housed so many of them, most of the dangerous ones, where they believe that they can never be allowed back into the society because of the nature of their mental health issues and the nature of their crimes generally. So Sharon went there, and it was mixed. It housed both male and female offenders. And while they're in a twist of fate, or I don't even know what to call it, Sharon Louise Carr actually fell in love. She fell in love with one of the convicted murderers, who was a man, and they fell in love because since it was mixed, the patients used to interact, or how do I put it? They used to mix the girls and the boys at general areas, and they used to hang out a lot, especially when they had activities. And yes, believe it or not, she fell in love with a man who was called Robbie Lane. Robbie Lane had been convicted because he had murdered his mother and gouged out her eyes. They both didn't know what they were in for, so they fell in love. They used to enjoy supervised hang time, you know. They used to cuddle, yeah. And they decided they are going to get married. So they went on, they ordered rings, and the staff at Broadmoor had to go and collect their rings, and yes, they were set to get married. So news of this marriage made national news. One day when they were chilling, one of the guards told them that there was a newspaper article about them, about their marriage, and they were excited. They wanted to see what was being said out there. And so the guard gave them the paper, and that is when they read what crimes they had committed. Like, Sharon learned what Robbie Lane had committed, and Robbie Lane read the details of how Sharon Carr had murdered Katie Rackliff. And it is said that they instantly got so disgusted with each other that they decided to cut ties, and they canceled the marriage. The rings were taken back, and yeah, that's it. You can imagine how crazy it is that they were actually, these two people, they both criminals. They both did unthinkable things, and now they're disgusted just by thinking about or by reading what the other had done, to the point where they decided that they're not going to continue with their wedding. So anyway, shortly after that, Broadmoor Hospital was converted to a fully male mental institution, and so Sharon was transferred to another institution, which was more, it was a hybrid of a prison and a mental hospital for these convicted murderers. And that is where Sharon was taken. And in this new institution, she had a roommate or a cellmate. And soon after she was taken there, Sharon started talking about how she had visions of her killing her roommate. And this was crazy because Sharon had been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and they knew it was a matter of time before she also started killing her inmates. And that's when Sharon was transferred to her own cell, and yeah, she has been in solitary since then. I think she is now in her early 40s, and she continues staying in custody. And I genuinely don't think she's going to be released anytime soon, because she is still believed to be a danger to others and herself. So yes, that is the case of Sharon Louise Carr. And yeah, this is the end. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Bye.